Okay, good morning everybody. Ask people maybe to move in a wee bit. I know we have to keep our social distance, but move in. Very welcome here this morning to St Mary's Hospital and indeed to the Famine graveyard. I'm going to introduce our MC for this morning's short remembrance and reflection. So Mary McGarvey, so call Mary up here.
Thanks, Aidan. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all here on behalf of Monaghan County Council to our ceremony of remembrance and reflection on this beautiful sunny morning. And I'd like to just commence our ceremony with the beautiful voice of Amelia McCormick singing Absent Friends.
The time has come to say goodbye, for every road must end, for the ones who care and are always there, our very special friends. So let's say goodbye to those we love, and maybe shed a tear. But before we close, let's think of those we love who can't be here. So let's raise our hands to absent friends, for every road must end. You'll always be there in our hearts, our special absent friends. As we go down the road of life, sometimes we race too fast, but as we chase the future bright, we can't forget the past. So let's say goodbye to absent friends, for every road must end. You'll always be there in our hearts, our special absent friends. And let us cherish the memories we hold inside our hearts, where those we love will always live, never to depart. So let's raise our hands to absent friends, for every road must end. You'll always be there in our hearts, our special absent friends. And when it's time for us to go and our long journey ends, we'll never be alone, you see. We'll be with absent friends. So let's raise our hands to absent friends, for every road must end. They'll always be there in our hearts, our special absent friends. They will always be there in our hearts, our special absent friends.
Thank you very much, Amelia. That was beautiful. I'd just like to pass on a couple of apologies as well. We have this morning from Councillor David Maxwell, Councillor Hugh McIlvany, and also our Chief Executive, Eamon O'Sullivan, who couldn't make it here today. Now, I'd like to invite Gillian Oliver to light a candle in memory of all those who lost their lives during COVID. Gillian's father, Lexi, sadly passed away from COVID recently. So I'd just like to invite her up to light a candle, please. Thank you, Gillian. Now I'd like to invite Miss Daphne Holmes to give us a nice reflection, please.
As we gather today to remember those who have died from COVID over the past 2 years, we are only too aware there is probably not a single person in our community who has not grieved the loss of a loved one, be it a partner, a family member or a friend. For many, the grieving was made all the more difficult without the traditional wake and funeral. Too many of those in this area who had contributed so much to the community did not get the type of funeral they deserved, with only limited family numbers permitted in the church, and sometimes not even in the church at all. While remembering those who have died, we should also spare a thought for those who contracted COVID-19 and those who had to spend time in hospital and in ICU, many of whom were very ill indeed, and some who continue to suffer with long COVID. We are grateful to God that they survived. Thanks are due to our government, the much maligned NPHET, and medical specialists who had to make difficult decisions on our behalf, and they were often greeted with hostility. And yet, without those restrictions imposed on us all, lots more lives would have been lost. We owe a debt of gratitude to all the medical staff, carers and other workers in our hospitals and nursing homes who carried the greatest burden and endured many personal hardships and indeed heartbreaks in the line of duty. Other great work was done by those in the retail and the service industries, by the ambulance crews in Garda, the school teachers with their online classes. The list is endless, but without their dedicated service, life would have been even more difficult for us all. And in our thanks, we must not forget the ordinary people, the volunteers who shopped and cooked and cared for their neighbours, even if it was simply by a phone call offering help. We have to remember that at that time, many people, particularly the elderly, were leading isolated and lonely lives. It has been a difficult 2 years, and some people's losses have been much greater than others. But for most of us, nothing will ever be quite the same again. Unfortunately, judging by recent figures, the coronavirus has not gone away. We can but hope and pray that we shall not experience the same devastation as before. It is now more important than ever that we continue to protect ourselves and thereby protect others in our community. And in conclusion, on a note of hope, some lines translated from a 6th century BC poet. All things pass. All things pass. A sunrise does not last all morning. All things pass. A cloudburst does not last all day. All things pass. Nor a sunset all night. All things pass. What always changes? Earth, sky, thunder, mountain, water, wind, fire, lake. These change, and if these do not last, do man's visions last? Do man's illusions? Take things as they come. All things pass.
Thank you very much, Daphne. That was lovely. And I'd like to invite Father Adrian Walsh, please.
Good morning, everyone. There is no point in me reading what I have here because Daphne has already, and more eloquently than I, expressed the sentiments that I had for this morning. I just would like to say that it has been an extremely difficult 2 years for a lot of people. There is a lot of sadness in all of our communities and families because of COVID and the pandemic. And the circumstances of sickness and death have been extremely troublesome to the spirits of many people, some of you gathered here this morning. Saint Monica, who was the mother of Saint Augustine, on her deathbed, she said this to her son Augustine: "All I ask of you is that wherever you may be, you will remember me." To remember someone, as the opening song said, the absent friends in all of our lives, to remember them keeps them alive, keeps them with us, keeps their spirits hovering, keeps their memory, keeps their love, keeps their devotion alive within us. And that is very important. And that's why an event like this morning is necessary for all, to remember absent friends, to remember the sick, to remember those who have died, and most importantly also, to remember those who cared for them. About 6 weeks ago, I was speaking to a nurse from this town, and she told me that in the middle of the second lockdown, she did a 12-hour shift in Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital in Drogheda. And at the end of that 12-hour shift, exhausted as she was, she went and sat with an elderly man who lived outside of Drogheda. She knew he was approaching death. And despite the 12-hour shift that she had completed, she sat another 4 hours holding his hand as he passed from this life. That kind of devotion, that kind of service, that kind of love, we give thanks for this morning. I finish with perhaps a small prayer. I invite you to respond to each line by simply saying, "We remember them." At the rising of the sun and at its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. God bless everyone.
Thank you very much for all of those lovely sentiments. Now, I'd like to call David Main up to read the poem, The Dash.
The Dash by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the gravestone from beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel. and be less quick to anger, and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering this special dash might only last a little while. So, when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash?
Thank you very much, David. Now I'd like to just invite Mohammed Takada, sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly, to say a few words.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to say thank you very much for invitation to us and for this organization. And last 2 years are very difficult for everybody in the world. Anyway, we're just from God, we will be a difficult time also as well. I like to read one of the surah from our holy book. Our holy book total is 114 surah. One of the number 1 surah name is Suratul Fatiha. This surah, another name is Ummul Quran. Ummul Quran means English says mother of Quran. It's very important when you pray. Every single time you have to read this surah also as well. I like to read this surah as well from my holy book. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite our Cathaoirleach Aidan Campbell to address you.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah. I do not think of you lying in the wet clay of a Monaghan graveyard. I see you walking down a lane among the poplars on your way to the station. Reverend Fathers, dignitaries, Chairman of Cartmacross, Castleblayney MD, Councillor P.J. Hanlon, Chairman of Ballybay, Clonus, Richard Truell, members of Monaghan County Council, CEO of Monaghan County Council, Paul Clifford, frontline services, all, invited guests, but particularly families who are here this morning who have lost loved ones. We are gathered on a beautiful morning here in March to remember, to reflect and to commemorate. It's very poignant where we are here this morning. We're at St Mary's Hospital, but behind me is the Famine graveyard where people were buried after the famine of 1845. We also remember this morning when we are remembering the people of Ireland, we remember the people of Ukraine who are suffering at this time also. As we acknowledge the scale of deaths that took place in Ireland, up to date over 6,600. This morning we remember each person and the life they lived. They are people we knew. They are people we feel we knew. We all know someone who lived lives of struggle, of purpose, of hope, who talked late into the night about their dreams, who loved, prayed, and always offered a hand of friendship. We often hear people described as ordinary. There is no such thing as ordinary. The people have spanned generations and they have been extraordinary. For the loved ones left behind, it was so difficult, as Daphne, Father Edie has said. The loved ones passed away. For some, it's been a year. For some, it's been longer. The birthdays, the anniversaries, the holidays without them, and the everyday things, the small things, the tiny things that everybody misses the most. And as has been alluded to already, with no funerals, it was very, very difficult. Rituals that help us all to cope so much, to help us to honour. The final rites with family gathered around didn't exist. The proper homecoming, showered with stories and love, didn't happen. To heal, we must remember. And this morning, we do remember. We also, here this morning, acknowledge the scale and the impact of the end-of-life care that individuals give to the dying and their families, particularly around County Monaghan. And no better example than that end-of-life care that was given was here in St Mary's in Castleblayney. And this was replicated all over the county and indeed all over the country. This morning, we thank all those people who helped with the end-of-life care. We thank them for their support. We thank them for all the help they have done after with the families. And this morning, we'd also like to thank all the frontline services again. There's so many of them here this morning. Their work has to be acknowledged, and we do that this morning. Finally, I want to thank Mary and Cathal for organising this morning's event, Greg and all the staff, Paige and all the lads for organising it, the Murphys, Amelia, and all those who took part today. This is an event that's happening all over Ireland this weekend, with one happening in Dublin on Sunday. So thank you for everybody for turning up for this morning's event. So I started with Kavanagh, and I'm going to finish with Kavanagh. Oh, you are not lying in a wet clay, for it is harvest evening now, and we're piling up the ricks against the moonlight, and you smile up at us eternally. Goro Mayagat.
Thanks very much, Aidan. That was lovely. Okay, we'd just like to conclude our ceremony now with the laying of a wreath, and I'm going to invite Sean Smith, who's going to play a piece on the trumpet for us. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for coming out this morning, and thank you to everybody who helped us get this ceremony underway and for all those who gave up of their time this morning. Thank you very much, Errol.